saying it might be so. Watch the love come alive. Sharing the truth that is lies.
Hello, it is Simply Tammy coming to you quickly with a thought I want to share, as well as an announcement and an offer. This is very casual. I am going to be possibly bringing some things up on the screen to share. So, want to keep this video brief, but I was thinking earlier today, and a passage of scripture came to mind that made me sit with a thought that I've been sitting with throughout the day and pondering. And I will start with posing the question because I would love for us to have some dialogue surrounding this, whether it's in the comments or if you hit me up via email. That I'm going to share an email address at the end. Do you truly believe that you're on the path and the journey that God has intended for your life? Even if you don't feel good about where you are right now because you know that there's more, you know that there's a next, do you truly believe, or have you accepted that wherever you are right now is part of your journey? So when I thought earlier today, because again, that thought evolved after considering what I would consider being raised in church all my life and having heard the story and being familiar with the story from the book of Ruth. Thinking about Ruth chapter 1, in that chapter we are introduced to not only Ruth, but her mother-in-law Naomi and her sister-in-law Orpah. And what we learn a few verses down in that chapter, Naomi's husband had passed away. After he passed away, her two sons took on wives, which are Ruth and Orpah. And then after about 10 years, they pass away. So I'm going to bring up, just for the sake of those that may not be familiar with it, and it may just kind of help us give a little bit more insight into the story. So verse 7 says she departed from the place where she was, which was in Moab, with her two daughters-in-law, and they all started this journey together to return to the land of Judah, which is where Naomi was from. So the words that I highlighted in yellow is what Naomi is encouraging her daughters to do. She was telling them, go return back to your mother's house. And she even speaks a blessing over them. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. So it continues to say, she tells them, may the Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband, because she was hoping that they would be able to find husbands again. Then she kissed them to signify this place or point of departure for them. And they all lifted their voices and they wept. So a moment of great emotion, having already lost Naomi, her sons, these two young women losing their husbands, and now having to make a decision to essentially break up the family unit that they have formed, because she's wanting to go back to what she knew as home and encouraging them to do the same. This is coming from, again, the book of Ruth chapter 1. So I'm not going to read everything, but again, highlighted in yellow, she again says to them in verse 11, return, my daughters, because they initially told her, no, we will continue the journey with you, to you and your people. So then she then is again in verse 12 says, return, my daughters, go, again encouraging them to go back to their land, their home, as she was doing the same. And this is most of what we have been familiar with if we have known the story over the years. Verse 14 says, they lifted up their voices and they wept again. Very emotional time for them. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. So I think this story kind of stuck out to me today because the book, as we know, is named after Ruth. We are very familiar with Ruth's story. Beyond that, if not, I encourage you, if you are not, I encourage you to go and read chapters 2 through 4. The whole book of Ruth is only 4 chapters, but we don't hear any other mention of Orpah. And my thought when I think about her, I kind of applauded her only because she made a decision in that moment that seemed to, I would believe, best fit what was right for her. Now, in a situation where someone that you have been with for this number of years or several years, at least 10 years, is encouraging you a number of times to go back instead of going journeying forward to a place that you are unaware of. Many of us may have, if we're honest with ourselves, not know, because we didn't know in chapter 1 that Ruth was going to have a Boaz. So Orpah made the decision based off what she was encouraged to do. So my thought, what I celebrate is her making a decision that didn't look like, that's not really celebrated. And I'm not posing this for us to start celebrating the fact that Orpah didn't cling and that Orpah may not have looked at as being loyal. What I'm looking at is the fact that there were two women who had very similar journeys from what we know up to this point, as far as marrying brothers, being in the same family, but then they were both at a crossroads and at a point of decision. And the question, the thought, what if the decision that Orpah made was the exact path that was right for her life? Because just because we don't hear what happened to her beyond verse 14, it doesn't mean that her life was horrible. It could have been, it, may not have been as glorious as the life we know that Ruth lived, for those of us that are familiar with the story. But I say to you, I say to us, just because the fullness of who you are, what you are, and even what shall be for you is not yet known, does not mean that it's not worth celebrating. Because sometimes we have to make decisions to stay, to be still, to even wait. Some of us are in holding patterns, waiting on God, and it doesn't look like the expected end that we are all looking forward to, but it doesn't mean that we are not on the intended path for the path he's intended for our life. Because the Bible also says in Proverbs, the mind of a man plans his ways, but the Lord directs his steps. And I know for my life personally, there are some things that I had planned and that I had intended. And you may have already heard me say this, to look at my life right now, there's so much that has happened over the years that if you would have given me a pen 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I would not have written my story this way. But I'm sitting in spaces and places still fully trusting God, knowing that he has directed my steps. And I encourage you to do the same. So to keep this video brief, I will go ahead and segue from the thought. I would love to hear what you think about what I shared about the power of decision, the intended path God has you on. Do you feel that you are in that place? And by way of announcement, and since I'm doing my own tech, I'm going to be not only putting up the announcement, but let me go ahead and I'm going to start clapping before I put up the announcement. I am excited to officially and finally announce the Embrace Your Journey coaching cohort. More information will be forthcoming about how the sessions will be facilitated. They will be both virtual and or in person. So there will be options for those that can meet with me here in person in Greenville, South Carolina, and for virtual sessions. They will be both small group and one-on-one. And to kick it off, I want to go ahead and start connecting with you, whether you become part of one of the cohorts or not. I would love to hear what you thought about what was shared in this video. And if you email me at info@simplytammy.com, share your thoughts about the power of decision, God's intended purpose and path for your life, or anything that may have pricked your heart from what I shared in this video. I would love to offer you a complimentary one-on-one coaching session. So go ahead, jot down the email, info@simplytammy.com. I look forward to connecting with you. And until next time, know and remember that it is your path. God is ordering your steps, and embrace your journey.
All things work together